Regina Ress, I want to thank you so much for being with us from New Mexico. And please tell us a little bit about your work. And then we are looking forward to your workshop on Captured by the Troll. We've just been talking about different mythological characters and metaphorical characters. And I think you're going to help us explore the character, the troll, and what the troll, if sometimes we are the troll, but also what trolls tend to do to us and what we can do about it. So please go ahead, Regina.
Hi, well, good evening and good morning and good afternoon and wherever you are. And thank you, Eric, for inviting me to be part of this. Thank you all for joining me. I see a lot of old friends and I see some, hopefully some new friends. Let's going to take a mini break here between that wonderful workshop. Thank you so much. I came in at the end because I am actually in the middle of a troll situation, quite external, but it's kind of captured me this week. And so that's why Eric said, you're here. And I said, well, are you ready? And I said, well, I'm here. Angela Zarian says, number one rule for life, show up. So we've all showed up. We probably, hopefully, will do a little drawing or writing. So hoping that you all have some sort of paper and pencils. Okay, my favorite is markers to do this kind of thing with if we actually manage this, because markers, you can't fix it. And so you are forced into that intuitive right brain. So if you've got anything like markers or crayons, that's great. You can take this moment to get them, or pencils, okay too. And if you don't have anything, that's okay too. Just glad you're here. Some of us are just arriving, and see who's going to show up. As I said, with the pencils and the papers and all that sort of thing, if you can't get it, don't sweat it. But it would be good if you have it. And I came in, and the first word I heard was Mary Louise was metaphor. And a lot of what I want to do today is about metaphor. I am a metaphor freak. And I'll say something about that a little later, but it was just so like, whoa, yeah, of course, those of us who work with, especially the old stories, we work with metaphor. Any of us who have done the shamanic work, we're looking at these bigger things, or psychological work. And so we see these images that speak to so much more than just what they seem to be on the surface. And one of the interesting things about them that I just thought about this morning in putting myself together here was that metaphors are gender fluid. And that the princess, and there's definitely a princess in the story I want to look at. The story is not just about a princess, and it's certainly not just about a young woman. Men get in these situations too. So the metaphors are so wonderfully universal, including, if I may use this new woke phrase, gender fluid. And that's very helpful. Whereas when we stick to personal story reality kind of thing, it does not go as far, doesn't go as far. So settle yourself in and find the chair, or find yourself in the chair or the sofa or the floor or wherever it is you are. And find yourself in your space. We're so busy on Zoom all the time. Just take a deep breath, sit back, see where you are, see what's in your space that you probably love, and welcome. And Eric, I just want to thank you again for creating this, gathering, allowing, encouraging, figuring out how to put this amazing month of exploration together. That's just so big applause to you. So captured by the troll. I imagine that at some point or another, most of us, to some extent or other, have been captured by a troll. Wouldn't necessarily label it like that, but they're everywhere. Not just in Norwegian folktales, not just in Scandinavian folktales, they're everywhere. And let me just mention that they're not the same as heartless giants or crocodiles. Those are the three biggies for me. I once, a few years ago, had a younger storyteller who came in through The Moth, if those of you know The Moth, but with the personal stories. And this young person said to me, well, I don't care about those old folktales, those old stories. I just want to hear and tell stories that are relevant to my life. And I laughed. I said, well, you don't think there's heartless giants in the world? Just look who's running some, places, who's in charge. There's some heartless giants out there. How about no crocodiles? Nothing dangerous out there. They'll eat you without blinking, literally. And the trolls. I said, where do you think the word troll came from? All those internet trolls, they are relevant, but it concerns me with the metaphors. And that's why I was so thrilled when I opened up the Zoom call and the first word I heard was metaphor. I don't want us to lose a sense of those metaphors or lose the understanding, and have them go back underground again, like these trolls and heartless giants. So the crocodile, they will just eat you. There's not a lot of subtlety to a crocodile. And I was talking to an alligator wrestler once. I was down in Florida, and I was talking to an indigenous man, a Seminole man, who was an alligator wrestler, because there's a lot of alligators down there in the Everglades. But there's also crocs. And I said, so what's the difference? He said, crocs will eat anything. They don't have taste buds. Alligators don't like the taste of people. They don't really want to go after us. If you get attacked by a crocodile, it's either a mistake or you've cornered it somehow. So they're dangerous, but they're not like crocodiles. And he said the crocs used to surround the Seminole villages and just attack. And I remember telling a crocodile and monkey story once to a group of middle schoolers in an urban, really down and out neighborhood in Newark, New Jersey. And the teacher was very concerned because, like, why is she telling this ridiculous story about a monkey and a crocodile? And the kids knew exactly what I was talking about, because there are drug dealers on every corner in that neighborhood. So those kids got it big time, you see. Heartless giants, well, they're around. They play the power games. Trolls. And I actually don't want to focus too much on that troll today, but there's a lot going on in the story, and I am going to tell you a story. But they're all over the place, and there are Chanakis, for example, in Mexico. A friend of mine, just a wonderful storyteller from Mexico, told me about the Chanakis. So they're named different things, and they might be slightly different than those Scandinavian trolls, but they are these creatures that kind of tend to live in caves, and they kind of tend to be strange looking. I have some images that I can show you, but they're going to mess with you. Crocs don't mess with you. They're going to eat you. Heartless giants tend to just do these bigger power games. These are big categories now. I'm not being real specific, but the trolls are going to mess with you. And there's some that are kind of fun, and you can have fun with them, but you don't want to get around them, because they will mess with you and they will capture you. And they're all over, and I'm sure we could all name a few. So, think of some words that you associate with troll. Just troll. What is a troll? I'm going to show you some pictures, Eric, can I share my screen? I think I do this before I then tell the story about the troll, but I do have these images because they're various images. So I can share the screen. Oh, goody, goody. Well, let me see if I can achieve this. Share screen. Well, here's a couple. These are what we think, if you know the Scandinavian folktales, this is what you think of, because these are classic illustrations of trolls. And if you look at this one with the three troll brothers, this is an illustration from a fantastic troll story. It's really the only troll story I do tell. They're not my stock and trade, but see a little princess here? So trolls are huge. They tend to be dumb and they will mess with you. You don't want to get involved with them. So, check them out. These are Scandinavian illustrations. On the other hand, here's a Shanaki, if I can get it up. There's a Shanaki. Can you all see that? So that's Aztec, Mayan.
No, we can't see it, Regina. You have to go back into share screen.
Okay, I thought I had. Okay, thank you, Eric. How's that? There we go.
Yes.
Valentina Ortiz was telling me about them. We were going to do a program, and then it got messed with, and we didn't get to do it. But it was called Tricksters, Trolls, and Shanakis, because she said they have a lot of similar characteristics, and they can be very nice. And they're they guard the earth and everything. So they're earth spirits, but they're not necessarily so benevolent. On the other hand, here's what we've done to trolls. Share screen. Because we're so afraid of them that we turn thingies. That's not really a troll, is it? But that is a troll. That's, so that's where we go. Cute troll. A far cry from that first Norwegian one. And then, let me get. And here's where we are. But you don't trust them because they will use you for their purposes. They will use you for their purposes. So they're dangerous. Even if they're cute little trolls, they'll use you for their purposes. And the troll can be external in the world. A member of my family just for a year had a supervisor at work who was a troll. Or they can be internal. What's stopping you from doing what you really want to do? Some little creature that comes out from the cave and just get you. So there's some images of trolls. Anybody want to say anything at this point? I will launch into a Grimm's tale about a troll.
Yes, I just wanted to say that it's become very popular common language now to say that somebody was trolling me on the internet or something like that. It's really in the vernacular.
When this young storyteller said he didn't want those old stories, they had no relevance to his life. I'm like, this kid's probably online all the time dealing with the trolls, right? And he had no idea where the word came from. We really, storytellers, this is my passionate thing, don't let those old stories disappear. Those the roots, and they are in our world, and they, and we name things for them, trolls. So very much.
Well, it's an archetype which takes different forms. And you're right, it's important to know the original or one of the original meanings of it.
Mhm. Yeah, and they're definitely there. I think somebody has a hand up.
Jeff?
Yeah, I've got a question. Yeah, I've got a question. Now, what I'm hearing you say is Shaniki, and am I hearing you correctly?
Shaniki, yeah, there are various spellings of it. I think,
Okay,
but see,
now what do you mean by that? Because I'm a Celtic storyteller, and in Gaelic, Shaniki means storyteller.
Well, no, that is a very different spelling. And that is, my friend said that they are Mexican, they're pre-Columbian, and they're Aztec, Toltec, Mayan, and they're very similar to the Scandinavian trolls, but no, very different. It's a different word. So CHANINEQUE. I've seen different spellings of it. If you Google it, you'll find a whole bunch of things about them. But it's not the Celtic Shaniki, no.
we have the same problem with the Celtic Shaniki. There's about a dozen different spellings.
Right. Yeah. So, and these things, I'm not a folklorist, but I am a storyteller. And so, we wander through this terrain. But what I'm saying is that there are they are archetypes. There are archetypes and they're metaphors, but they're all over because there are these odd little creatures who might be fun, but they will use you for their purposes. And that's that troll, the trolls under the bridge. Right, the trolls in the cave and the trolls under the bridge, but they're mainly classically in the Norwegian and to some degree the Scandinavian folk tales, and then others in that part of the world. Well, let me tell you a Grimm's tale. I have a Grimm's tale for you today, and it's got a troll. It's very short. It's not like Cinderella. So it's one of the short Grimm's tales, and it's not very well known. It's called Old Rink Rank, and some of you may know this story. I've been wandering in and out of using this story for years, but not telling it as a performance piece, but using it, and I can talk a little bit about that later. So here's the story. So I'm going to ask you, listen to it, listen for those metaphors or just even moments that capture you. What captures you in this story? What gets your attention in this story? There was a king who had a daughter, and when the princess was of marriageable age, he caused to be built a glass mountain. And I'm going to give you that opening again. And I love the phrase caused to be built. Already, that puts us in this place, right? Caused to be built. There was a king who had a marriageable daughter, and when she was of age, he caused to be built a glass mountain. Slippery slope, it was. And he sent out a proclamation. Whoever could cross the glass mountain without falling could marry the princess. Whoever could cross that glass mountain without slipping and falling could have her. Many men tried, but they failed. But then one day, a young man arrived at the palace, one who truly loved the young woman, and he asked the king if he might try. Yes, you can cross the glass mountain. If you can cross it without falling, you shall have her. Well, the princess said she would cross over the glass mountain with him, and that she would hold him if he was about to fall. So they set out together to climb it. And when they were halfway up the mountain, suddenly it was the princess who slipped and she fell, and the mountain opened and shut her inside. And the young man could not see where she'd gone. The mountain had closed over that crack that she fell through. He wept, he lamented, he loved her. And he went back to the king and he told him what had happened. And the king sent soldiers and had the mountain broken open, the glass. But underneath it, it was more mountain, mountain, mountain. They could not find where the crack in that mountain was, could not find where she'd fallen, could not find her. Well, meanwhile, the king's daughter had fallen quite deep down into the earth, and she found herself in a great cave. And there was an old fellow with a long gray beard. It fell from his head to below his knees, and he came to meet her. And he told her that if she would be his servant and do everything he told her, she might live. And if she did not, he would kill her. And so she did what he told her. In the mornings, he took a ladder out of his pocket and he set it up against the mountain and he climbed to the top and he drew the ladder up after him. And the young woman had to cook his meals and make his bed and scrub the stone floors, do all the work in the house. And he would come home in the evening. His pockets were filled with gold and silver, things stolen from the living world. Well, many years passed, and this budding young woman shriveled into an old woman. Her step became hesitant, her eyes expressionless. She forgot her home. She forgot her family. She forgot her life. She forgot the scent of honeysuckle over the gate to the garden. She forgot the sound of the sweet nightingale song. She forgot the clear blue of the sky even. She forgot her own name. Ultimately, she forgot her own name. And the old troll, he began to call her Mutter verrotten. Mutter verrotten. Mother rot. Or rotted. Mother rot. She had to call him by his name, which was Old Rink-Rank. Well, then one day, and we love those words, don't we? We know what we know. Then one day, abracadabra, when he was out, Old Rink-Rank was out, and she had made the bed and washed the dishes and scrubbed the floor. When everything was done, she closed the door and locked it. She shut the windows and locked them, except for one. There was one very high up, very small window. It was the one the light came in. And she left it open. She tied a long cord to it, but she left it open. So when Old Rink-Rank came home and he knocked at the door, it was locked. And he cried, Mutter verrotten, open the door for me. No, she said. No, Old Rink-Rank, I will not open the door for thee. And then he said, here I stand, old poor Rink-Rank, on my 17 long shanks, on my weary, worn-out foot. Wash my dishes, Mutter verrotten. I have washed thy dishes already, she said. And then again he said, here I stand, old poor Rink-Rank, on my 17 long shanks, on my weary, worn-out foot. Make my bed, Mutter verrotten. I've made thy bed already, she said. And once again he said, here I stand, old Rink-Rank, poor Rink-Rank, on my 17 long shanks, on my weary, worn-out foot. Open this door, Mutter verrotten. No, she said, I will not. Well, then he ran all around the house and he saw a little window that was open. That was that window she left open. And he thought, I will look in and see. He couldn't really see. So he thought, how can I get my head through the window? And he couldn't. So he took this big, long, bushy beard and he started threading it through the window. And he figured if he got the beard through, maybe he could get his head through. There would be some space. So he did. And when the beard was through the window, what she did was she pulled that cord that she had attached to it and she shut the window. She shut and she caught him. He was caught. He was caught by his beard. He begged her to release him. He started to cry, this troll. He started to cry. Oh, he cried most piteously. It hurt him. It did. He begged her to release him, but she said, no, no, not until you give me the ladder. Not until you give me the ladder. Well, what could he do? He was caught and it hurt him. So he told her where the ladder was. And before she left, she put another long ribbon to that window and she set up the ladder and she ascended the mountain. And when she was out and on top and out, she pulled this second long cord and she opened the window. She let him free. She freed him. And then she found her way back down the mountain. She found the way down to her father's palace. As she walked down, she began to remember the honeysuckle in the garden. Oh, and the song of the nightingale. She had a memory of a young man who loved her. And there waiting for her was not only her father, but her beloved. You know, time is fluid in these stories. It's so wonderful. Oh, and did I mention, when she was out of that old troll's cave and she was finding her way home, she remembered her name and she became herself again. Now, the end of the story in the original text, it says two things. First, that the king had his soldiers go up there, dig up the mountain, find old Rink Rank and kill him and bring back the gold. Oh, bring back the gold and silver that was stolen from the kingdom. Yes. And secondly, the story tells us the princess married her betrothed, of course. And of course, they lived right happily in great magnificence and joy. They lived happily ever after. So old Rink Rank. It's a little story. It's a short little tale. So what are some of the images? I'm just, like to hear from you. I'm just looking at the time. Good. Okay. What are some of the images that caught you? Or maybe better yet, what are some questions you have? It's really interesting. Without getting long comments, just what are some of the questions you might have about this story? This little story. Anybody have a question? Or just throw an image that really got your attention?
Well, her capture of old Rink Rank with on his beard, and then her decision not to release him afterwards. That seems puzzling or interesting. Yeah. And I wonder if that's a sterilization of the story. Maybe the storyteller didn't want her to be cruel, or maybe that is the story.
Because this is, that's the original text. She lets him out. Her father doesn't, but she lets him out. So all of these things can be in entire, of course, workshops on their own. Why did she let him out? You could get into that really deeply. It's an interesting thing. Anybody else?
Yeah, I wonder what happens after she lets him out. I mean, I expect a second act. I mean, that troll is not, going to be very happy about what happened. And I don't know. I just think it needs a second act.
Well, call up Mr. Grimm. It's an interesting story. Any other questions or, images?
I'd
Just-
like to make a comment.
Yeah.
One of the things that I find extremely interesting about this story is that the princess goes with the prince who needs to do this task, this challenge. We don't often see that happen, where it's the princess who more or less says, "Oh, don't worry, I'll take care of you, and let's be off together."
Well,
So
yeah. Anybody, yeah,
Oh, I was just gonna say, I liked, like, the imagery was great, but I liked the fact that in this journey of being captured, right? She took this situation and made it a win for herself on her terms. And that she, by having the ladder and going down and to me, the beard, the interesting thing about the beard is it kept his face close, right? It could have been a foot, it could have been a hand, but it was the beard. And you can judge a person by their face, right? Like you can see so much in a face. So she could see whether he's being honest or what. Like, to me, that was an important detail, that it was the beard so that the face could be seen, right? That it's a great story of empowerment, I think.
there's so much gold in this story. Gold is not only in Troll's caves. That's back to how I started in the last speaker ended, was metaphors. Metaphors. They are nuggets of gold. All we have to do is be aware of them and start to mine them. Eileen, is that you? Eileen Shapiro? Oh, Ellen. I'm sorry. Ellen Shapiro, Ellen. Did you want to say something?
You're muted, Ellen. You need to turn on your mic.
This story brings back such memories. Thank you for telling it. And I have to say that your telling was honed down, was so honed and so pure, and I loved it. And what has always gotten to me about the story is she forgot her name. She lost her identity. She forgot her name. And even though she forgot her name, somehow she had the strength to figure out, to capture the troll and get the ladder.
Right. Okay. Well, I would like to get to that because I know the description of this workshop. I finally went and looked at what I'd sent. That was my original description. Since then, it's evolved. Right. But one of the things that I said we wanted to look at was, how do we get the courage? And let's keep going with this. But I definitely want to come back to that because I've got a story about that. Good to see you, Ellen. And sorry, I said Eileen. I'm a little crazy today. We all are. We've all been captured by a major troll, in worldwide troll, right? So we're all just kind of, as we say.
Hey, we're on Zoom. What can you say?
We're on Zoom. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Just the seeds, the golden nuggets, the images, or a question. The questions are really good. Like, what? She let him go? I wouldn't have let him go. Any other questions?
Jim.
I'm Jim Levinson, and some of you may remember I'm the one who's known Regina longest. We grew up together on the same street. I'm wondering if, since this is a Chennai festival, if someone here from India could tell the story, or relate to this, the story of Ram and Sita. What I remember, this has to do with the competition at the beginning that the princess's father organized. And that was the same with Sita's father. I think his name was King Janak, and he said that his daughter, Princess Sita, would be wed to the man who could lift and string Lord Shiva's bow. And Ram, who was the prince of Ayodhya, came, and of course, he was the one that was able to do it. And in this case, they lived not quite happily ever after. They had some further adventures. But I wonder if somebody could tell the story. Let me just mention that I have had the opportunity over the years to officiate many weddings where one or both of the wedding partners were Indian. And in each of those cases, I would insist that there be such a competition, a swayamvara, even if it was only one contestant. Sometimes in one case, I made the young man ride an Indian water buffalo. In another case, they had to sing the Indian national anthem. Could somebody from India tell us the story?
Well, I don't think we should get too far off track from Regina's workshop, but is there, I mean, you've given a little summary of the story. Rupa or anyone else, do you want to add a little bit to what Jim has said?
I was also wondering, in India, in Indian mythology, there are a lot of demons, you know, so they're different from trolls, but they are the ones, they are the troublemakers, you know, they come and they do this, they capture women, and we see that happen again and again. So I was going to ask Regina how demons, you know, figure here. And I don't know if there's something that is equal to a troll in Indian mythology. I was trying to think.
Yeah.
Well, Ravana certainly is not a troll. He's a strong king.
Right.
But the common factor is someone who harasses the woman and you know, causes trouble for her.
Right.
I'm sorry. You finished? I just found on a definition, because I've been wandering through trying to, you know, get definitions of trolls and this and that. Trolls originated in Norse mythology and folklore. They're the cornerstone of Nordic legends. They're everywhere. So this is so cool. In medieval sagas, troll denoted everything from wild boars being controlled by sorcerers and heathen deities to undead warriors and non-human ogre-like soldiers. So there's a lot of descriptions of them, and I'm sure there's a lot of overlap with the demons. That's what I was saying. There are these creatures all over, and you know, I'm not a folklorist. I'm not an academic. Eric might know even more, but you know, just looking at the general pattern. Why? Because they're metaphors for, you know, I mean, maybe you believe in them as literal, but most of us see them as metaphor for just some stuff going on in the world and some creatures that we run into. And then we get into the psychological idea of we have these trolls, we internalize these trolls. And they're the voices in our head that say, you can't, you're ugly, you're this, you're that, you know, and you do this because, you know, whatever. And we forget who we are. How many people have, you know, lived out a life that wasn't who they really were because they thought that was what was expected of them. And so, you know, at some point they do or don't get the ladder and get out of the wrong life. And those of you who saw me tell the story a week ago about the young weaver, she weaves reality, but she's not that passive princess. So Jim, you were talking about, you know, and there's so many of these stories. I mean, how many stories begin? Once there was a king, he had a daughter and he gave her away, right? Usually she came with half the kingdom, which is why most of those guys showed up to begin with. They didn't care about her to begin with, right? You know, so that passive princess is everywhere. And I want to say this, guys, These things are gender fluid. It happens to men too. Domestic violence happens to men too. 1 in 7 men in the United States is violently abused by a domestic partner. Okay. So, don't take it as only the women get this, but, we know the whole history of the patriarchy and everything. It tends to be, but this is about us too, that passive princess. And the father, the king, the father gives her away. Those stories are everywhere. That in the young weaver that I told a week ago, she's not a passive princess. She weaves reality every day. She weaves it into being. And so when she makes a big, big mistake and weaves a jerk to be her husband, right? And he's impossible. Because she didn't start out as the passive princess. She knows how to change her story. So these are big themes that go through things, right? And whenever I work, and I've done some work with women in prison or with, people who have some problems or even don't have problems, I say, don't raise your daughters to be princesses. Raise your daughters to be queens, because queens have sovereignty and princesses tend to be passive and just get handed along until they wake up. So, yes, did you have, yes.
Yes, I had a question. We're talking about that waking up. She was so asleep, or she was under the troll's control for so long, and then you just said, well, one day. And there's no pretext of what happened on that one day, right? So I'm
Right.
so curious.
No information is given. And that is one reason I love the old stories, because no information is given. Therefore, everyone who's listening, who identifies, can see themselves. It's not a specific story. So that's the beauty part of you don't get all the details. Now, that is a huge question. And I was working one time with formerly incarcerated women in a workshop. They had to go to group every week or, until their parole or whatever. When we did this story, they loved this story and they got this story. And so I didn't tell it first. I just went through it one step at a time with them. And when we got there, there's all these noddings of heads, and I said, what took her so long? What took her so long? That was my question. What took her so long? And one of them just said, because you don't change your life until you hit rock bottom. And when you hit rock bottom, you get up and change it. Now, what gives us that strength, that resilience, that, persistence to do it, the courage to do it? That's that big question. But preceding that question is what took her so long. And that woman had that spot on answer. You don't do it until you hit rock bottom. And what is it that shifts? And maybe one of you might have an answer or a thought. Yes. Is it Jeff?
Story, it seemed to me that as she lost her identity, it allowed gradually her inner child, the id, to come out. And the id would know all the stories about how to deal with trolls and how to deal with demons and deal with monsters. And while her conscious mind was suppressed, the id gradually came out and said, oh, I know what to do. Grab him by the beard. So maybe it was just a matter of sometimes we have to disengage our conscious self and allow our inner self out.
Anybody else have a thought on that or a thought on beards? Yeah.
I was actually impressed that in the first place she crossed the mount, she went with him to handle the mountain. I mean, she was not like a helpless princess who
No.
would obviously, her dad must have told her not to do it, but she went ahead. So she
No.
had courage. It just needed to be pushed, for her to finally take that step.
Right. Well, that place in the story is interesting because the story says, and that happens in a lot of these kind of stories. Then one day, a young man arrived who loved her. Okay, and so a number of stories that have that motif in them, right? But she recognized it. And so she said, I'll help you. Her father said, go ahead and do it. He was not a tyrant. He was not a tyrant. So it could be she had a good childhood. We don't get her backstory. So you have that passive princess, but she's not all that passive, is she? Because she says, wait, I like this guy. He loves me. He's not here because he gets half the kingdom, right? I'll help him. And her father says, okay, because her father obviously recognizes that too. We don't get a lot of information. So back to what I started, the metaphors, the gold, these are golden nuggets that we are so easily overlooked in those stories, but every moment in a spare story like this is there for a reason. There's no external details here, right? And we end up with a pile of gold. I mean, one of the things, we could do is just list everything. If we were in class together, in a room together, I'd have, the whiteboard, and I know you can use a whiteboard on this, but it's so complicated. And we would just make a list of all those things that are in this story that seems like this kind of weird little, and it's not a popular, have any of you ever heard this story before? And I know Ellen Shapiro has, because Diane Wolkstein took it and created a picture book, beautiful picture book called The Glass Mountain. So some of us knew it from there, but it's not one of the popular Grimm's tales. I think it's very powerful, Grimm's tale. And then it's echoed, as Jim mentioned, in all the way into the mythologies. You find these kinds of things, right? But he was not a tyrant. The beard is very interesting. The window, that's the little window that lets the light in, right? She knew where the light was coming from, right? All of these things can be turned into other stories. The ladder. The image of a princess as house drudge, she had to learn a few things. So she grew up in a garden, and I can speak for myself. I grew up in my father's garden, and I didn't know nothing about the world. And boy, did I have some lessons to learn once I left that garden. So she grew up in her father's garden, and with obviously a benevolent parent, and the mother isn't in the story. And that's another whole thing, like a lot of these stories, the mother's missing or the father's missing. And so those are all things to be mined. Where was he? But so she grew up in the garden, and she had to learn a few things. So, okay, I'll go out. Oops. So she had to, get down on that rock floor and scrub the floor. What's all that about? That's very interesting. And she forgot her name. And that's, losing our identity is a big deal, right? I love that the troll, he's nasty. He's not nice. He says, you're mine, and you'll do everything I tell you, or I'll kill you. That's the first thing he says to this woman, right? It's like, okay, and she was caught. And it does not say he abused her as such, but the terms were pretty strict. And if she didn't, he'd kill her. The other thing that I find interesting in this story, and in a lot of stories like this, is the elasticity of time. Because in a lot of the stories, you know, time here is not the same as time back home. Because when she gets home, the beloved's still waiting and she's, you know, once again who she was. So there's this time thing, which is so interesting. And some of us are experiencing some of that with COVID because have the last 2 years gone. So that's very interesting. When I worked with this story, with those in the women, in about 75% of women in jail have been abused. So because this is very much, if you want it to be just the metaphor of domestic violence, but it's bigger than that. Like I said, it could be your boss. It really could be your boss. But the backstory on the troll, one of the women in that group said, or I might have said, you know, do you think it was right for the king to kill him? And, you know, generally you go, yes, but then somebody said, yeah, but wait, why was he the way he was? And then we're back to that question one of you had, why did she let him out? You know, what's his backstory? You know, why was he so mean? Why was he a troll? What makes people be like that, right? And there's a saying, at least among storytellers that I know, if you can't hate somebody whose story you know. You may hate what they're doing, but if you know their story, you can't hate them. And the women got into that. The ladies I did that workshop with, they wanted to let him go because they wanted him redeemed. You know, they wanted him to shift. They wanted him redeemed. So, yeah. Anybody else? I'm talking a lot. Does anybody else want to say anything? Jeff, you're
Louise and Faye.
Yeah, Louise.
That was an incredible story. I have a question. I'm wondering why the troll called the princess, it was something like Mother Rot. Why did he call her that?
Anybody want to answer that? You can't get their inner rink rank to answer that.
Well, maybe another way to trample her, right? Like to hold her down by insulting her, by making her feel rotten. Yeah.
Diane Wolfstein in her book says Mother House Rot. That's what she's, but the texts that I've seen that are the originals are just Mother Rot, like not rotten mother, which we then say it means, you know, a terrible mother, but rotted or rot, you know, so that's pretty low. Anybody have a thought about that? You know, you're so stupid, you're so ugly. That's what we do. You're nothing better than rot. Yes, Denise.
Just thinking about it now, Regina, as you're talking about it, she's taken under the earth. It's almost as if she's died. And it really does follow that going in through death and being reborn again later on. And because we don't really know what the lessons were that came to her, it may have been something that would give her empathy for other women who do these chores all of the time, so that she might rule better when that, you know, honor and responsibility is given to her. So we don't know, but yeah, it's that going into the earth, coming back out again. Good story, Regina.
It's a beautiful story. I think it's a very powerful story. Did anybody else want to say anything? Or I'm going to
like Ellen looks very keen to speak.
Yeah, Ellen and Jeff. Regina, can you see people?
Yeah, a little bit,
Why don't you choose gallery view and then you'll be able to see everybody.
Oh, well, there you go. Thank you. Ah! Oh my God, it's a room full of people.
Go ahead, Ellen. Yeah, go
Zoom
ahead.
is such, Zoom is, I'm just, Zoom is a trip.
I think he named her Mother Rot because it was all about destruction. And he had her doing the same stuff over and over and over and over again so that she would forget the song of whatever bird and, and luckily sunshine or light came in through that window. But it's all about the destruction of the spirit, the destruction of the soul.
For transformation, as someone just said.
Yeah.
So we're back to these, the metaphors and the non-literal meanings here.
But he didn't just say destruction, but mother. So the mother piece we haven't discussed either. Ellen, I think that was really wise. Like, what is that mother part?
Right. Maybe he hated his mother. What's his backstory? Again, here's this very not well known and very, it's a short story, right? It's pretty spare. Look how much is in it. And we haven't even gotten to, and where do we go to turn it into personal story? Because we can. We still have half an hour. I was thinking to do a little, do a little drawing piece and then go into breakout rooms and actually get to talk to each other. Does that sound like fun? Is this what we would do if we were in real time? I would love to go look at this story in real time and have a full day or a full weekend and get into mask making and everything else. I just see all sorts of things one could do with this.
Well, if we go into breakout rooms, can we do a little bit of relating it to personal experience?
That's what personal experience. And what I always say is, and if you don't want to do that, somebody, whether when it's happened to you or when it has happened to someone or you have seen it happen to someone, so that there's that safety, because not everybody necessarily wants to tell when they've been called Mother House Rot, but maybe somebody, does, what we haven't mentioned is falling into a crack. Who here has not fallen into a crack, right? We fall into cracks. We fall into cracks. And the trick is, how do we get out? How do we find the ladder, right? Maybe always know where the sun is. Yeah.
The slippery slope too.
The slippery slope. I have to admit that was not in the original text I put. But the glass mountain, yeah. I mean, but the slippery slope words were, but the glass mountain, yeah, that's immense. And that's in other stories too, I think, glass mountain. So what is that? What is that? So why don't you here's this. Okay, I said, get some paper and a pencil or markers, which I love. And maybe find one of these things in there that really attracts you, or that you already know that relates to something, a story from your experience or somebody's experience that you know of, and take a few minutes and draw that. Because then I'm going to ask Eric to just put us into breakout rooms and then share the picture. And then from that, maybe you can get into some storytelling with each other and then bring that back to us. Does that sound like a plan? So drawing is very interesting. It accesses that other part of the brain, especially if you use markers. So take maybe 5 minutes at the most. draw something from this story that's really, even if you do it abstract, even if you do it just completely abstract, what captured you in the story and that you might turn into personal story? Okay, let's try it. Yes. Sure. Where's 32? It's not enough time. So because of the time that we have, maybe finish that picture and we'll get into the breakout rooms and just share these things with each other. And then we'll come back and talk about it. We don't have a lot of time. Sorry about that.
Okay, what I'm doing is I'm just making 3 rooms with 3 people each who have their cameras on. The people who don't have their cameras on, I'm not going to put them in a room. It's just going to be 3 and 3, and Rupa and June. I'll put you, and Radhika, I'll put you in a room now too. June, Rupa, and Radhika.
Eric,
and
I turned
Jen,
on my camera too.
and Jen, you're here. Okay. Jen, I'll just put you in the room with the other 3 of them. Okay, shall we go to the breakout rooms?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay,
Did you put me in a room, Eric?
who's speaking?
Claire Nolan.
Claire? No, I did not yet.
Erica, put her in the room that June Brown is in. I have guests arriving at this moment and have to leave.
Okay, I'll let me open the rooms and then Claire, I'll try to put you into room 4. Okay, rooms are opening. Okay, now Claire, I'm going to try to put you into one of these rooms. Neely, did you want to go into a room?
Yes, please. Thank you,
Okay.
Eric.
Mm-hmm. And Daniel, can I put you in a room? Yes. Okay.
So are the folks who,
Oops, I didn't mean to come in here. I've got to go back to the other room. Sorry, bye.
Okay, bye-bye. So should we